Good afternoon, and welcome to the Recreation and Education Committee. Happy New Year, everyone. It's I think our first meeting of the year. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Barker? Here. Mrs. Draw? Here. Mr. Gamble? Here. Mr. Morelli? Here. Chairwoman Valerio?
Here. Also, will the individuals, our esteemed individuals at the administration table, please introduce themselves? Thank you.
Madam Chair, I'm Jerry Helfer, Assistant County Executive.
Madam Chair, Ann Kress, President, Monroe Community College.
Diane Cicero, General Counsel, Monroe Community College.
Tim Murphy, Monroe County Director of Real Estate.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. Robert Franklin, Director of Finance and CFO.
John Rizzo, Deputy County Attorney.
And Justin Fiesel, Director of Communications.
Thank you very much and welcome. Is there anyone signed up for the public forum?
There is not.
Is there anyone present who's not signed up to speak who would like to address this committee at this time? All right, there being none, the next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes. You have the December 18th, 2012 minutes before you. They will stand approved unless the clerk is notified of any changes by the end of the day. The next item on the agenda is new business.
Referral 13-0043.
Okay, it's moved by Mrs. Draw and it's seconded by Mr. Barker. Is there any discussion from any of our legislators regarding this referral? Okay, Mr. Gamble.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to thank the administration for giving us an opportunity to speak with the distinguished delegates over there. Unfortunately, I was unable to make it to the presentation last night, but I still have a list of questions that I would like. And if you bear with me, I appreciate it. At the first meeting that we had with you guys, you indicated that we were going to participate on the STEAM system with the city. Now I'm hearing that that's changed. Is there a reason for that?
Sorry. Through the chair, I think right now that's an element of the contract that's still to be defined. So that's still in discussions between the county and Kodak.
Thank you. Is that going to bear any more expense on us, or is it going to eliminate some expense on us? Because at the time we were talking, it was somewhat definite that that was the route that we were going to take. Have we investigated all possibilities as to how much of this is going to alter the budget that we had initially?
Through the chair, John Rizzo. Yes, all of those avenues will be explored, and again, we are negotiating the contract, and that's a term and condition that will be negotiated with the best interests of the cost to the college and the county taxpayers.
Thank you. And through the chair, last meeting we had, we also spoke about the circular for the transportation for the youth. Have the I's been dotted and the T's been crossed on that also, or we're still in negotiation about that?
Sure. Through the chair, there's two things that we're talking about in terms of shuttling students. One is obviously the existing MCC shuttle between the Brighton and Damon City campus. What will simply happen is the location of the drop-off point would shift from the Sibley campus to the Kodak campus. The other is that we're in discussions with our GRTA about a number of opportunities for our students to access the Kodak campus through public transportation. A circulator is a potential option, but the reality is even with the acquisition of this property and the beginning of the building process, we still have over 4 years to actually resolve all of those. So those are still an active discussion with our GRTA, but we anticipate a very good conclusion for our students. I would also note through the chair that right now about 40% of our students use public transportation to attend MCC, both at the Brighton and the Damon City campus. So some of those students will actually be bypassing any route downtown directly, would use the MCC shuttle. So we want to focus in on what population would not be doing that so we can best meet their needs.
Thank you again. That's a great answer. We do have 4 years to work through some of the issues that may come up. One other thing, the space. We asking for so much space. So what are you going to do with that? I mean, is that okay? Has it been authorized? You know, that's a lot of space. I mean, we only have so many students in the city of Rochester and the county of Monroe. That's an awful lot of space. What other plans do we have for that space?
Sure. Through the chair, right now we don't have any specific plans for the additional space at the Kodak properties. What I would note is that over the past decade, the Damon City campus has actually grown by 31%, even though the population of Rochester and the Monroe County, I don't think has grown by 31% over the past decade. So one of the things we see is that by providing opportunities for new students and different student populations to access the campus, we actually grow a population of students even when the population of the county or the city is stagnant or declining. So what we see is that when we look at either our existing Damon City campus, where we really, as one of our faculty members put it this weekend, have no elbow room, or we look at our Brighton campus, which right now, according to our master plan, is overbuilt by about 30%, we see that it's actually a really great investment, as does SUNY. If we were able to acquire, I would say, additional property at today's cost for future use.
Thank you. My last question. I know that since you came on board, Dr. Kress, that you've been very instrumental and very forthright about trying to find a new location for MCC. I thought when you took your swearing in, you made that one of your priorities, if I'm not mistaken. Why the Kodak campus? Is that a better deal for our constituents? Is that a better deal for the county, in your opinion? That's why you're pursuing this so lovably and so with so much passion that you're trying to get this thing done.
Through the chair, thank you very much for those compliments. I should end my answer right there. No. Through the chair, I think that one of the things, honestly, right after I got here, unfortunately, was that the Renaissance Square campus, which I thought was going to be built shortly after I took office, fell apart. And so what we really did was we went back to ground zero at the college and looked at all of our options, understanding what our budget was, with the recognition that that budget, although time had moved on, in fact, it had been almost a decade since it had been set, the budget was not going to change. So fiscal responsibility was really one of the key thoughts in our mind when we looked at sites throughout the downtown area, and quite honestly, a lot of them blew right through that ceiling, so we took them off the table right away. Then as our board chair eloquently states, we have concerns about our students and what are our students looking for. So they were a key constituent base in this, and we surveyed them. So when we looked at the opportunities that were in front of us, and then we saw the opportunities that were posed at Kodak, it really was the best option, both in terms of fiscal responsibility, but also in terms of the need for a true campus environment.
Oh, thank you. So you, through the chair, you see us growing into this space. That's why you have no problem trying to acquire all the space that we have. We're just going to grow into it. I know you mentioned a couple of things like going green space, and a variety of other initiatives that you wanted to undertake. So that's why you're so passionate about this space.
Definitely. Through the chair, what I would add is that, you know, what you heard very clearly in the State of the State address from Governor Cuomo, but also what you saw identified in his executive budget, is a real call, and I would go so far as to say a demand for community colleges to expand programming, both in terms of number of programs and in terms of slots available in programs where they're directly responsive to the regional workforce needs. Sitting on the regional workforce Economic Development Council, I have a real sense of all of these opportunities that are there, these middle skills jobs, something that needs more than a high school diploma, less than a 4-year degree, and the ability for MCC, from my perspective, to offer those career pathways through the new downtown campus to the city of Rochester is really crucial to its economic survival.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
So, and any other questions? Mr. Morelli.
Thank you. I'd also like to thank Dr. Kress and her team for coming and for speaking with us yesterday. Through the chair, I'd like to know a little bit more in terms of the space. We're talking about going from amount of space of purchasing 547 thousand plus square feet and only using so much as half of it. I'd like to know, speaking to that point, how much less would it cost us if we were to not purchase all of that, specifically, I believe, Building 16, which is where a lot of the extra space is going to be?
Through the chair, as part of Kodak's negotiations, it was either an all or nothing proposition in terms of negotiations. So the 540,000 square foot, it was either that or, again, nothing.
And through the chair, if Kodak was insisting that we purchase this space, why was it that we didn't look elsewhere for alternative options, considering that they were so hard-handed with that was the space that needed to be purchased? Why didn't we think of, to look somewhere else?
Through the chair, good question. I would say that even with the additional space, and I would maybe underscore actually with the additional space, this was a more affordable option than the others that we considered. We certainly looked at other sites, repurposing other buildings in downtown Rochester. Some of them, without naming what they were, went right through the $100 million mark, which was well above our budget. And so we knew that what we were looking for was also a very fiscally responsible decision. I will say one of the things that, at the end of the day, although this was not what we initially looked for, which was additional space, we do see that this is a site that continues to grow. As we ended this process, in terms of the discussions with Kodak, was when MCC finished its master plan, which was just accepted by the board late last year. And when we saw what was happening with the master plan, which has been presented and has a hefty price tag associated with it, the notion that we might be able to offload some of the back-end offices and other things at the Brighton campus to another location and recapture some classroom space, which would be highly affordable, was also significant. So I think in many ways, getting this additional space isn't just the most fiscally responsible decision today. It really is a great investment for the future.
Through the chair, you mentioned MCC's, the Brighton campus may be moving some administrative over to the new building. Is that something that's set in stone? So do we now have a plan for the vacant space, or is that still something that's being discussed?
Through the chair, that's just being discussed at this point. We do, however, through the chair, I should note that in looking at this property and in looking at the downtown campus period, we did engage in a program planning exercise, and so that did guide what I would call status quo space use, which is one of the reasons why we're looking at saying things like we have twice as much space as we need today, but I would underscore today there.
Through the chair, Dr. Kress, you've spoken about being fiscally responsible. As far as I would see it, there's some obviously maintenance costs to being empty space. I mean, you still have, maintaining an empty building. Is that something that's been thought about how much the cost will be to maintain that space until you're able to use it? And at the same time, ideas on how much more money will need to go into refurbishing the empty space?
Through the chair, we certainly have looked at the ongoing operational cost of that facility. That was a fundamental principle that our board was interested in as well, looking not just at the acquisition and the renovation costs of any property that we considered, but also what would be the ongoing cost to the college of operating that. And so those are well within actually the existing operational costs that we saw for our current facility. The other thing I would say is that if you were to tour the Kodak location, you would see that, and we would probably follow the same practice if those spaces weren't to be used at all that Kodak has in terms of really, I would say, mothballing that space and reducing all costs associated with that.
Through the chair, I'd like to ask some questions about the commitment from from the SUNY system. What exactly have they committed, and do you have their commitment in writing for purchasing space that won't be used for educational purposes?
Through the chair, we've been working with SUNY throughout this entire process. And when I say throughout this entire process, I really do mean for the past 2 decades on the downtown campus. They've been kept abreast at every step of this. I know that the Minority Caucus has requested in writing some verification from SUNY, and we're actually in process of obtaining that for you. But as late as yesterday, we had discussions with them, and they're fully aware of all aspects of this deal.
Thank you. And through the chair, would SUNY require, yesterday we had talked a little bit about potentially renting the space to, I think you said Rochester Works programs and other, potentially speaking with other programs on renting the space. Would SUNY require that they be refunded the money if it was being used by someone else, that money they had put into the building?
Sure. What I would just say is that, we're looking at a lot of partnerships right now. Most of them are preliminary. We would visit that issue with SUNY when we actually define something. But the most significant issue for SUNY is really that we're using the renovation dollars for the property that MCC would be occupying for instructional use purposes. And that's something they're very vigilant on. So, of course, we would check in with SUNY before we entered into any agreements. But when I say we, the reality is this is property held by the county in trust for the college. So those discussions would, of course, involve the county as well.
Thank you very much. That's the end of my questions. I'd just like, if I could, Madam Chairwoman, make just a brief statement. As a former MCC student myself, I know what a great school this is and what an asset to our community it's been for more than 50 years. And I congratulate Dr. Kress on all the advances she made in terms of education and continuing to make MCC such a great institution. And it is because of my determination to see MCC succeed that I'm unable to vote in favor tonight. I'm simply not convinced that the administration's plans makes the best sense for students or taxpayers. And I am particularly concerned at how little time we have had to review and debate an issue this complex and this important. I hope we have a chance to take a step back and talk about what this will mean for the thousands of people who depend on MCC for high quality and affordable education. I thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
Any further questions? All right, at this time, we'll do oh, yes, Mr. Brown.
To explain my vote.
Okay.
I will be voting in favor of this. Mr. Kress, I think that you've done a fantastic job. Your zeal is infectious. The community, in my time in the legislature, has, when people come up to you and want to talk about county issues, this would be the issue that most people have come up and supported, bar none. Nothing else has even been close. My community is very much behind this plan, and as an educator and a teacher, I do believe that this is what's best for kids, and so I will be voting in favor of this plan. Thank you.
Any further questions? All right, there being none at this time, we will take a vote, and I would like to have a roll call vote.
Okay. Mr. Barker?
Yes.
Mrs. Draw?
Yes.
Mr. Gamble?
Yes.
Mr. Morelli?
No.
Chairwoman Valerio?
Yes.
4-1, it passes.
Thank you. All right, is there anyone signed up, or anyone who's present, who is, wait a minute, what am I doing? I'm reading the wrong page. I'm sorry. Okay, all right. Is there any unfinished business to come before this committee? All right, there being no unfinished business, the January 29th, 2013 meeting of the Recreation and Education Committee stands adjourned. The next meeting of the Recreation and Education Committee is scheduled for February 26, 2013. Thank you.